fact, you're going to find that we generally agree on the basics of the situation here, which is there are armaments that have made their way from Iran into Iraq. There are Iranian forces in Iraq. These weapons are being used to kill Americans, and we're going to do everything we can to protect our people.
The substance of it, the briefers over the weekend said that these parts are sent to Iraq with the approval of senior Iranian officials. And the bottom line is he seems to be contradicting that.
Well, I think what General Pace may have been saying, in fact, I know he is, and this is where we get to the rhetorical question I was asking you before. Do we have a signed piece of paper from Mr. Khamenei or from President Ahmadinejad signing off on this? No. Are the Quds forces part of the army, part of the government? The answer is yes. So the question is, I think this ends up being a semantic dispute about senior levels of the government or the government. And the fact is, the government knows about it.
But isn't it really a question about whether or not you have strong evidence? When the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff seems to be saying something different than the White House, does that raise questions about how solid this evidence is?
No, because you have explosively formed penetrators. He says they exist, correct?
That in this particular quote, but I don't know.
He said that there are weapons.
He says that there are projectiles manufactured in Iran.
So, yes. So there's no doubt about that, correct? There are Iranians in Iraq. There's no question about that, correct?
Sure.
All right, so where's the credibility problem in terms of,
in terms of the Iranian government being behind it? Nobody's disputing whether it's manufactured in Iran. That's why you keep changing what my question is.
No, I'm trying to clarify your question because I think this is a dispute about
I'm trying to tell you I know what my question is. And basically, he's saying that he doesn't see evidence that the Iranian government is clearly behind it. I've asked that 3 or 4 times. You haven't answered that. You're saying the Iranian government is behind it.
Okay, let me put it this way. I'll say it one more time. The Quds Force is part of the Iranian government. The Quds Force is behind it, is associated with it.
Okay.
All right? Thank you.
Let me follow up on this because we have a situation where right now a lot of the American people are hearing a lot about Iran and whether the government is involved in sending the weapons across or not. And now it would appear that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the administration seem to be on 2 different pages.
We're not, and that's why I'm going to let General Pace speak for himself. We're not on a different page. I know that's why I'm saying, because Ed's question, Ed is citing a quote that he said earlier. I'm going to let him, he'll be able to put it all together, because Ed's not going to believe me when I tell him what my conversation was.
And he's in the air for 23 hours.
I already laid it out for you, man.
But it seems to be a reasonable expectation that the American people can have to get some kind of explanation for how you can have the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the administration on 2 separate pages.
We're not on separate pages. The explanation, I know because everybody's trying to get into semantic.
The administration is confident the report on Iran is accurate and the weaponry is coming with the knowledge of the Iranian government. But now you're saying the Quds forces, which is part of the Iranian government, you're sort of parsing.
Well, I was parsing yesterday. I'm trying to be careful about how we do this. The question is, do we know that some particular senior official is signed off? No, it's an opaque government. It's not a transparent government. But on the other hand, this is part of the Revolutionary Guard, which is part of the government, and therefore you do hold the government responsible.
So somebody who reads General Pace's quote says, that's different than what Tony Snow said yesterday. They're wrong.
Yeah. And I think we'll let General, no, he didn't retract because what he said was accurate as well. What he was thinking is, are you trying to lay this at the feet of members of the Supreme Governing Council? Are you trying to lay this at the feet of particular individuals? The answer is no. We don't have the intelligence that makes it that specific. He was trying to be very precise in how he answered the question. And I was being careful in how I answered it yesterday as well. We know the Quds forces are involved. They're part of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. That's part of the government. That's just not going to go any further than that. Yes, sir.
Deputy Assistant Undersecretary of Agriculture is part of the government. Would you say that if somebody was involved at that level, that's a top level?
If you had somebody who was operating with an elite military unit, operating inside the United States, committing acts of violence, would you say that the sponsor government bore some responsibility for that elite military unit? We're not talking about Deputy Assistant Secretaries of Agriculture. Cute question, but it doesn't get to the point of people who have moved armaments into Iraq and are killing Americans.
Yesterday you said in that regime there are not freelancers.
Right.
you stick by that statement and thereby drawing it to the larger...
Again, let me just, again, here's your rhetorical question. What's more frightening, the notion that they are freelancing or that they're not? No, I'm just posing a question for your consideration.
Information. I think just the bottom line question still is if the chairman...
the information is... What's the information?
He's a general. I mean, he knows this better than any of us in this room.
No, there are two things you need to understand. Number one, you guys have been constantly... I did see what may be the dumbest lead of an editorial I've seen in a long time today in the New York Times, which is, we need to declare ourselves on Iran. We've declared it over and over. We're not going to war with it. Okay? Let me make that clear. So anybody who's trying to use this as an administration trying to lay the predicate for a war with Iran, no. We're committed to diplomacy with Iran. But we're also committed to protecting our forces. Let's go back through what we understand. We understand that these weapons came from Iran. No dispute about that. We know that Quds Force has been within Iraq. No dispute about that. We know that the Quds forces are, in fact, part of the Revolutionary Guard. They're an instrument of the Iranian government.
The yeas are too